Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me. My name is Bradley Shaw. Tonight on Between the Covers, I'm talking to Colin Baldwin, author of A Soldier's Quartet. Good evening, Colin. How are you?
Hello, Bradley. I'm fine, thanks. Yourself?
Good, mate. Good. Thank you for joining us. And please do tell the viewers what are they going to expect when they buy a copy of A Soldier's Quartet? What is the story about?
I can't answer that in one sentence, I don't think.
5 words or less.
5 words, anti-war novel. I think if I had to describe it in 5 words, it's an anti-war book. But obviously, you know, it's more than that as well. Look, it's a book based on a true event. It's about a letter that was written in 1918 that found its way back to Tasmania somehow. Wow. And 100 years later fell into my lap. This letter is about a German family that lost a young soldier in the First World War in France, in a small village in France. So it's about a character, a Tasmanian man that goes in search of this story and goes in search of this young man's family and makes contact with the family in Germany.
Wonderful. And so this was based on the true story or the experience of it, but you embellished it a little for the fictional side, but kept the truth elements in the history. So tell us about how you created that bridge of bringing that together.
Well, initially, once I made contact with the family in Germany, I asked them whether or not I could write something about this experience. A historical account of me finding this letter and then searching for them. It took me about 8 months to locate them, and they were fine with that. So I started writing an historical account, and it just lacked something. I couldn't do it. It just wasn't me. I needed to make something bigger, maybe, without sounding too pretentious. And so I dabbled with just writing a story about this young soldier that died in France. I had clues in the letter. I had his Christian name. I had the town that he came from. I had the town, the little village in France that he died in. Yep. I had the names of his 3 friends or comrades that buried him. All of that information was in the letter. So I researched the battle near this French village and his regiment. I had his regiment number. And from there, I just imagined how he fell and I imagined the landscape that he was in and imagined his friends, how they felt when they buried him. So I wrote this, I would say, a chapter. And then I said to the family, look, you know, I've gone one step further. I've actually made a story about this. How do you feel about that? They were fine, provided I changed the names. Yeah. At first, I was a little bit disappointed. I wanted to honour this man and this family. But then when I started on the other chapters, which were partly based on me and partly based on this letter, it opened up a story. And an easy way, I actually warmed to the story and it developed and it took over.
And it's a strong thing that the writers can use that situational thing of like what if and imagination, as you say, and using that tool in writing this sort of story, but keeping it to its core truths as well, like keeping that, making sure that all the elements still have authenticity, that, you use that historical base is really important. So, and was there a lot of research into that specific history?
Yes,
because
for
you've actually
sure.
identified a lot of elements in it.
Oh yes, I went into full research mode,
Yeah.
and you know, I had, as I said, with all these clues about the regiment and the day, and it was a task. It was a task, but an enjoyable one.
Good.
But
Good.
I think, you know, I found that to write one sentence in a book, I could spend 2 days researching, you know, but it sort of paid off. Yeah,
good. And what are you hoping the readers gain out of this book when they buy it and read it with you?
Look, I think it's got a bit of everything, and I want the readers to see. I'd like the readers to see how my journey into this letter evolved, and how, you know, you can visualize how terrible it would be for these young people from all sides. I started you know, the how this letter got to Tasmania was always a bit of a mystery during the writing, and so I invented a couple of young Tasmanian soldiers that went off to fight, and there is a clue in the letter. It was brought back as a souvenir. There's a very short English inscription on the side of the letter which proves that it was a war souvenir.
Wow.
And so I just made up this, you know, I invented a story that somehow it fell into the hands of one of these young Tasmanian soldiers, and like all soldiers, they brought it back as a souvenir.
Yeah.
However, halfway through writing that, I did get a request from the German family. They were aware that I was writing frantically. Yeah. And the request was that to use the research skills that I had to find the actual real identity of the soldier who brought the letter back.
Yeah.
That's in the book as well. So I'd like readers to see that, you know, there's twists and turns in real life as well, and sometimes there's no answers.
Yeah. No, that's right. And of course, as you say, you worked with the family over there, but did you find your family here was supportive? Did you find that you know, they sort of were intrigued as to why you were giving so much, you know, time and commitment to this mystery as you were unfolding it all? How were they? How did you find that?
Look, very much so. I mean, I was fortunate because I was retired, so I didn't have to compete with work, and I could, you know, find quiet times in amongst all the other things I was doing to just, you know, glue myself to the computer and let the writing just happen.
Well done. It's a good thing you're not a major handyman, or else you have all the chores to do. So at least you have time to write.
The family knows I'm not I'm not a handyman. That's definitely not my forte.
That's right. So you had more time with your retirement. So did you find that you were invigorated and excited by the story itself, like as it unfolded for you? Because naturally you've got part imagination, but you're actually researching the facts of the thing. Did you find quite an experience, and it was easy to write that with energy, or was it exhausting as well? Like what way did you feel?
It was a bit of all of that. It was exhausting. It was like a monster sitting on my shoulder, and I'd be walking down the street or driving, you know, or picking up grandchildren, and this voice would be, you know, always over my shoulder saying, don't forget to write this, or you better check on this. And so it was exhausting, but in a very pleasurable way, I suppose. I don't know what other I'm a first-time writer, so I don't know what the process they go through, but it does take over your thoughts. And I think that has to be a good thing. But yes, sometimes, you know, someone gave me a really good tip, and that was put a notebook beside your bed, because if you wake up in the middle of the night either dreaming about your story or your characters, you need to write something down. That was the best bit of advice, because mostly in the early morning I would wake up and I would have to scribble in the dark something I was thinking about.
That's good. That's good. Well, that's obviously the sign of passion as well, because if you've got that much energy invested in it, then your brain's going to kick in and help you with it. That's really good. And it was also my next question. It was about how did you find help from other writers because I mean, naturally, being a first-time writer, you not only have to learn how to create a story, you also have to learn how to tell it. You also then have to learn all the elements of putting it all into a book, as you said. So how was that experience as a first-time writer? And of course, what help would you get from locals?
I got a lot of help from a couple of one family member and a close friend who helped me with a bit of reality checks here and there.
Yeah.
And also to check on my grammar. It was like going back to school to learn proper grammar. And I'm not an expert. I still don't think I've mastered that, but luckily I had some people. And then before I submitted the book, I did have it appraised, and that was very helpful as well. It was very good for someone that didn't know me and didn't know the story about this letter, to have a look at what I'm trying to achieve and say, look, you know, do you really need that in the book? That was a useful question. Yeah,
because sometimes as first-time writers, you sort of put everything in there, and then of course you've got to filter through it because you're so enthusiastic, but you're also not cultured in the art of writing yet, so you haven't crafted it. So once you get more analytical, self-critical, that's the key to being a good writer, I think, is really understanding what you have to do to create a book. So you've done it really well. Like, I was really impressed with it, even though, like I said, you're a first-time author you've taken on a big story in many levels and many characters. So it's quite impressive. So anyone watching this, please, if you get a chance, grab a copy of this book. It's not perceived or written by a first-time author, I promise you that. Colin's done an exceptional job. So given you were retired, you had a lot of time on your hands, did you dedicate a set structure to your writing? Did you set up hours a day, or did you just let time flow as you needed?
I think that would have been good, but it didn't happen. When I was writing the book, when I was, quite heavily into writing the book and researching, there were some other things that I did and do in my retirement. So it was, again, fitting it in a little bit with all the other commitments.
Okay.
Yes, but I take my hat off to people that can structure their day like that. I'm not too sure if I can get there. I'm a bit haphazard.
No, that's okay. That's you're learning the craft. First book time, there's no rules on first time writing a book. Maybe everyone tells you things, but really you got to work with what works for you, and you got to the end result. So regardless, you did a great job. For you, what does literary success look like?
Look, oh gosh, that's a hard one, isn't it? Because as a first time writer, again, you're not quite sure. You're fumbling away. I did Bradley read once that if a writer sells 10 books, then that's success. If I sell 10 books, then I class myself as successful. But look, just jokes aside, the success I have to be really careful with, because I don't want to disrespect the German family. I don't want to ride on the coattails of their story. But I wrote this book as to honour, this young soldier and all those soldiers. I just feel very deeply about that. Their voices are often lost with 100 years of history, and other people, other artists bring it, to our conscience again, and all that sort of stuff. But success. I always revert back to, the story is about this young soldier and this letter of fate. And if I can do justice to that, that would be success for me.
Yeah, good. I think you will. Don't worry. So that's interesting too that you say that, because what is it that made you, being a first-time author, not writing anything before, really decide this was the book you want to write? This was the book you want to pursue. This is the story you wanted to publish. Most writers in their first books usually write for the trash bin. They say, okay, you know what, I'll write it, I'll learn the craft, and I'll write something better. But you went straight into the big project, the big passion, and took it all the way through to publishing. Why? Why did you decide you were ready for that then? Right now, why is this book?
I don't think I thought about that when I first started writing it. I genuinely and honestly wrote it, as I said, to honour this young soldier. As time went on and as the story grew, and friends said, "Oh, you should publish this. This sounds really good." That's when that seed germinated. And I think once I finished the transcript and it was appraised by someone, and I got encouragement from that, and I spoke to the German family, that's when I then made that huge step to think about publishing. And I'm glad I did.
No, you'll be very proud. I'm sure the readers will be very responsive to it too. So the hardest scene for you to write, what was that? What would you say was the hardest for you to write?
It's funny because that very first chapter where I reconstructed this death of this young soldier was the easiest, and I look back and think, well, that's strange, why wasn't that the hardest? But I think it was because of that was what started it all. I had to get that out of my system, and once I finished that chapter, then the other things grew from that. I think one of the hardest. I think the contemporary ones about my character was quite hard because I still have to put myself in that character, but I'm not Colin Baldwin in the book. I'm someone else by request.
But they're still you emotionally, mentally.
Yeah. So I think to describe me as a character and to take out some of the idiosyncrasies that only close people that know me about, would recognise that I had to delete a lot of that. At first I was having a lot of fun, but then, I realised people wouldn't get that. So I think the contemporary chapters were the harder.
Well, that's where you really, could you say, constructing your imagination and fitting it into the story's dynamic. So very good. So did you? How long did it take you from the incubus of the letter and the style and the design to write, to put it in together?
I came into contact with the letter mid 2017. And I started writing the next year. In 2018.
So what were you doing?
Sorry, Bradley, sorry. We met the family in 2018 and on a pre-arranged trip. And it just so happened we were going to the area where they live, so we could fit that into the trip, and that was wonderful. I started January 2019 writing.
Okay, wow, that's a very short cycle still. From 2017 thoughts, research, writing, 2021 publishing. That's amazing. So you've done really well for a first-time author. The question I was going to ask was, what were you doing before you were writing? Like, had writing since you were young always been something you wanted to do, or was it just an incubus that just appeared to you for this story? Or where were you before?
Look, I did think about that the other day, and I can remember in my early 20s using an old-fashioned typewriter and typing something, a story, got to about page 30, just gave it up. I don't know where that went. And I honestly can't even remember what the story was about. And so many moons ago, I did think about it, and I gave it up as a bad joke. But it was, I think the fate of me finding this letter was the catalyst for me to write. And Absolutely.
And so what's next for you? Will we wait for another letter to arrive on your doorstep, or are you writing again? Are you looking at what's your next one?
I am writing again. There were some themes and characters in the first book that got deleted. And I grew to like them, and I'd like to keep that thread, still keeping the storyline going, but going off into a different direction. Good. And there's also I've composed a string quartet to go with the book, and that while the book was with the publishers, that was my focus, and that kept me going. So that was good. Yeah.
So there's another potential book coming, which is wonderful to hear for the readers who, I'm sure will become fans of your style and your stories.
Yes.
So before we go,
yes.
Tell everybody, just if you happen to notice consciously, did you develop any writers' quirks? Most authors, when they're writing, have these little attributes. Some write naked, some write bare feet, some listen to music, some have to sit in a certain position. Did you develop any sort of quirks that you found noticeable through your process?
I think, I think to answer that, a few days a week I pick up some grandchildren from school. They play in the park, and I started writing, taking a notebook to the park, sitting in the sun and writing in the sun, and that with the children playing around and the birds flying and all that sort of nature stuff. And I think that was a quirk. Yeah,
that's a nice quirk to have. That sounds very relaxing. That's good. So everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. Colin's book, as I said, is available in September, and it's a very exciting time. So well done, Colin. Congratulations again. Everybody, please rush out and buy it at your local bookstore. Support your bookstores. They need our help as much as anywhere. You can also buy it everywhere books are sold online. And thank you again for joining us, everybody, and take care and stay healthy during this time. Now.